Assignment 03A simply provides some practice with string concatenation, or we could also do it with string interpolation, and I'll show you both ways to do that. We're going to create an interface in which the user enters an article, a noun, a verb, a preposition, another article, and another noun. They'll click the Concatenate Sentence button, and then in this label here at the bottom, we will have those 6 words concatenated into a sentence with a period. Now it says up here to create the app for an iPhone SE. I wrote these instructions years ago when the iPhone SE was sort of the top model. You can use any model of iPhone you prefer. I'll use an iPhone 14, the latest. If you want to use an iPad, you can do that as well, and just design accordingly. So we'll create the interface, and then we'll do some coding. And there's a tip here that we don't know for sure that there will be text in each of those text fields, so therefore we want to unwrap those as optionals. So make sure you use the exclamation mark after the text property. Let me show you my solution. I've created the project in Xcode, and as we've seen before, we have a view controller, which is going to be our code, our main storyboard, and then we have assets if we had any images being shown here. And of course, there's also a launch screen, which would show just for a couple seconds as our app is loading. Right now it's just blank. I'm going to go back to the main. So here's our main storyboard. So I want to show you how you can change the view of your background. And in the view controller, we have our view object. And that's what everything is inside. That's the container for all of our controls. I can click the view object here, or I could come down here and click on the empty spot on the view, and notice it gets highlighted there. And over here on the inspectors panel, we're looking at the attributes for the view, and you'll see background color. So I can choose a color there. Maybe I want to use this darker blue. And I'm just going to do a Command Z. I'm going to come over and choose custom, and then choose a color over here and change the color that way as well. Or use any of the other methods for changing colors. Again, I'm going to do a Command Z, and I'm back to that nice light blue color. I have a bunch of labels on the left-hand side and a text field on the right-hand side. The text fields I have colored to be yellow by setting the background. And then I have a button. I set the background to basically a maroon color. You can use any color you like. And then a label. And the important thing here for the label here is I want to have lines set to 2 because it may need to wrap. And my default text here for the labels, enter words and click the button. Now I want to show you a little thing that I discovered as I was working on this in this newer version of Xcode, and I'm using 14.2. I've done this in previous versions, and in those previous versions, I took the labels and I gave them a little border. Just a straight border style. And we come down, I'll do this one as well. Now, if I test this in the emulator, notice what happens. I lose the background color for those that I set the border for. Now, I don't have an iPhone to actually test this on, and I haven't tried it on my iPad. I don't know if this is an emulator issue or if this is a Xcode, latest version of Xcode issue. But that shouldn't be happening. So just be aware of that. Now, if I set these back to the round format, then the color shows up fine. Same way if I were to take this one and choose the border style of none, that works great. Now notice that with the border style of none, the text is right up against the left edge, as it is with the line border and the bezel border. Let me also do the bezel border here so you can see that impact. I'm just going to run again. And you'll see the no border or the border of none works fine, but the bezel border does not show the background. Haven't played around with that much to figure out why that is. But again, I'm going to count that as a bug at this point. Okay, so let's go back and change this to the round and the round here. So they're all consistent. I put in some default text in there of "an alligator shouted to the elephant." So again, that is basically my interface. Now when I ran, you see that I'm getting some warnings here in terms of there's not any layout constraints. I haven't set any constraints. You notice even without constraints, since I'm designing for this one phone, it actually looks really good on that phone. If I were to design for multiple phones, I might have some problems. So down at the bottom where we had before our constraint button, there's also a little button here to resolve auto layout issues. And that's what we're seeing over here. These are auto layout issues that are popping up with some warnings. So I can click on that and I can choose to add missing constraints. I can clear the constraints. I can reset to suggested constraints. I can do that for the selected views, or I can do it for all views. And the all views probably is getting cut off here a little bit. Same way, I can also select multiple views here, come back, and I can add the missing constraints for all those. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And you'll see all those constraints are built in. Those warnings go away. And if I test now, we'll see it still looks great. Okay, so it's probably a good thing to add those auto constraints. Let's take a look at our code. I'm going to hide the navigator panel. I'm going to hide my inspector panels. Let's bring up our code window. So go to the view controller. Let me set this one back to, actually another way to do this is to show that navigator panel. And in this window, actually in either of these windows, you can come over and if that's our active window, I can choose over here what's shown in that window. Now I'll hide that navigator panel. Okay, so I created some outlets for each of my 6 text views. Again, all we do is we hold down the control key and drag over, and it will create an outlet. And it will ask us to name that outlet. And we'll keep the type as UI text field. I'm going to click cancel if I've already done that. And then I gave these names of article 1, subject, verb, preposition, article 2, object. And then I created another one for the label down here, which is named sentence. So it's a UI label. Then for the button, again, we hold down the control key, we come over, and now we're going to create an action. And we're going to use a touch up inside event. And I'm going to use UI button as my choice and give it a name. So I named mine concatenate. Again, I'm going to cancel. And then I wrote some code. So the code inside that button is we're going to take the text of our different text views and unwrap that and assign it to 6 constants that I named my article 1, my subject, my verb, my prep, my article 2, and my object. So make sure you include the exclamation mark. For everything except for the first article, I wanted them to be lowercased. So I also changed those strings to be lowercased. Now, 2 ways we can do this. And since I was playing this before, I'm going to show you the second way first, and that's interpolation. So I can create a variable of my sentence equals. We can show the value of each of those constants with a backslash and then the name of the constant, or if it was a variable, it would be the name of the variable inside parentheses. And it's going to take my space in between this sentence. So if I were to have multiple spaces or wanted a hyphen or something, notice I have a period here. That is all literal text in between each of these interpolated values. And then I simply show sentence.text equals my sentence. So let me go ahead and run that. And if I click concatenate the sentence, I get an alligator shouted to the elephant. And I could change these values. And now we get an alligator ran to the elephant. Right, I'm going to stop. I'm going to come back to my code. And I'm going to comment out the interpolation. And then uncomment concatenation. So I have a second way of doing this with concatenation. I'm going to just stretch this out a little bit. So I wrote this on 2 lines. So variable my sentence equals my article 1 plus a literal string of a space plus my subject plus little string of space plus my verb plus space plus my prep. And then I'm going to append to that using the concatenation operator and equals. So my sentence plus equals, and we'll add to that my article. Oh, and I just realized I took out the space that's needed there. So I want to concatenate to the existing value of my sentence a space, then my article 2, a space, my object, plus a period. Let's try this one. So now we're using concatenation rather than interpolation, and we'll see that works as well. And if I change these values, and type in ostrich, I get an ostrich shouted to the elephant. So either way works. Great example. There's oftentimes more than one way to code something. If you just jumped into this video, you can see all the videos from the iOS app development cohort playlist by clicking on the image in the lower right. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos that I create, you can click my picture up in the top right and subscribe to the channel.